Well, good morning. So here we're going to take a quick look at Jargon and how to get it and build it and use it. So just a quick sort of orientation. So first, everything that we do here you can find on the Rincy GForge site. So this is at code.rincy.org, and this is the view you get when you first go to the site. And here it allows you to, in the upper right hand corner, register a new account, which is free to do if you want to access the code and, for example, do commits and things like that. Otherwise, you can use a guest account that we'll show you in a second. So here I am logged into GForge. If I go to the projects page, there's a whole range of iRods related projects you can see. And here we have there's a distinction here. There's the old Jargon from a few years ago that used to be in the iRods distro and in that Subversion repository. And it's still there, but that's mostly just for a few legacy applications that are still using it, and it's not recommended. Here is the new Jargon. And so we call the old Jargon Jargon trunk because it used to be the trunk of SVN. And the new Jargon we sometimes call Jargon core, because it's a set of core libraries and then extensions to it. So here I am, I've picked the iRods Jargon page, and you can see here we do a lot more frequent releases than the iRods core server itself. And currently our release is 3.3.1.1, so it's just a maintenance release. And here is the git tag, and you can see here for the next release we're developing 3.3.2 snapshot in Maven. And then we have a feature branch, which is 3.3.3. Okay, and then you'll see news here about what is the current release, and there will be links. So let's follow the link here. So one way of getting Jargon is to go to this page and go to the link off the news page for the most current release. And you can see here are some release notes. And then if I select files, you can see here is the jar file, a jar file that includes the dependencies as well as the Java docs. Okay, so that's one way of getting Jargon, but that's probably not the easiest way to do it. The best way to do this, if you want to work with it, is to get it from the Git repository and then build it locally. Or you can obtain it from Maven by putting a dependency in your POM, and we'll talk about that. Anyways, for this little segment, let's just talk about getting it from Git and building it yourself. So here on the left-hand side is a Git tab. And if we look at access info, this will give you some tips about obtaining Jargon. Okay, so anonymous doesn't work on GForge. Don't ask me why. So what we did is we set up an iRods guest account with a password of iRods guest. And so if you're coming in anonymously, which we'll do today, here are our instructions about getting those libraries. If you have a GForge account that you've requested and you've joined the project, we'll talk about that in a second. You can also do the git clone command with your developer name, which, for example, if you have commit rights, allows you to commit back to the repository. All right, so let's go over here. We'll copy this little command here. If I can not fat finger it, okay. And we'll go to a browser, and I've set up a little directory here, so I'm just going to run this git command. So we're going to clone the Jargon repository into a local git repository. And remember, the password, if you're iRods guest, is iRods guest. Okay, and so now we're pulling the Jargon code in from Git. There we go. And so there's our Jargon directory, so we'll cd into that. So this is a Maven project, and you can see we have our master POM here at the top level, and then we have several projects. So Jargon core are the main libraries, and then we have things like support for tickets. Here's the transfer engine that's getting ready to go away, things for doing tag libraries and things like that. So sort of a mess of interesting and useful things. So let's go ahead and take a peek at the POM. Okay, and you can see here that this will build, the current version in this project is 3.3.2 snapshot. You're on the release branch. And you can see if we scroll down some of the different dependencies. So you can see what sort of things Jargon depends on, and so forth. So that can be interesting and instructive, so you can see. But we've tried to keep the core API as small as possible and as lean as possible, both in terms of what it does and the dependencies it uses. So Jargon, if you recall, it's kind of like a JDBC driver. It's handling the wire level protocol between a client and an iRods agent running on a server. So it handles all the packing instructions and things like that going back and forth and the data movement. Okay, and then on top of that, it's trying to create sort of a service level API. So it's easy for folks who are good developers but don't know iRods, for example, to be productive pretty quickly, we hope. So anyways, let's try to build this. So one way we can do this is just install it in your local repository. Okay, there are a lot of unit tests that go with Jargon, and if you haven't done the test setup, which we can talk about in a later video, the best thing to do is just use the -d maven.test.skip equals true flag so that it doesn't run the unit tests. And again, we can talk later about how to set up and run the tests yourself, which is really not that hard, and it can be very useful. And so here we go. So we're building all these sub-projects. Takes a second. And that installs them in your local Maven repository. And all of these artifacts are also available on the Renzi Maven repo, and we'll talk about that probably in another video. We're going to run out of time. So here we go. So we're building Jargon. And that's almost finished. And then I think what we'll do here is why don't we also take a look at creating the Java docs. So if you're familiar with Maven, none of this will be surprising. So there's a Maven command, mvn java doc. And so this is going to create the Java docs for all the subprojects. And there are a lot of, you can thank me later, there are a lot of good comments and documentation you'll find within the Jargon API docs. So it's a good place to start. And while that's running to build the Java docs, I will point out that there's a wiki here. And we're trying. So here is a Jargon developer's guide. And here too, here's some links about getting Jargon, cover some of what we're talking about here. This developer's guide talks about different things like how to authenticate and how to connect, and what are I/O objects, how to do queries, how to set up testing. Here's a deploying with Maven link, some references to iRods error codes and Unix error codes. So just know to go to the wiki. There are some things that I think actually might help you get started. And so that's how you get on GForge, either download the code or pull it in from Git and build it and build the Java docs. So that's probably enough for this little installment. And I think next time let's talk about using Jargon in your projects by configuring Maven dependencies. All right, see ya.